The coordinators are official, and Mike Vrabel's too tall to hire. Good morning. We're happy to have you guys for the next 3 hours. Lucas Panzica is back there making it go. Good morning, bud.
I just picture a sort of ruler height measurement device that when you walk into the interview must be this short to interview or accept this head coaching job in the NFL. Oh, Vrabel, sorry, you're like a foot taller than the requirement.
Too tall, casts too long a shadow, it would seem, according to our dear friend Diana Rossini of The Athletic. We'll get to that momentarily. Did you have one of those maybe in your grandparents' kitchen, maybe in your parents' house when you were growing up? One of these walls in a room where you're measuring yourself every time your family gets together, whether it's your cousins, whether it's your siblings. Every time the family gets together, you compare how much you've grown since the last time you were measured against the wall. Yeah, you've done this?
Yes, of course.
So are we picturing a room somewhere in Los Angeles or Atlanta, the two places where Mike Vrabel interviewed, where as soon as he walks in, it's kind of like a you must be this tall thing, as you just mentioned, like a roller coaster ride type of situation?
You must be this short.
This short.
Clearly he's too tall.
Too tall. 6'4", too tall.
Now, Jim Harbaugh, 6'3", so barely made the cutoff there. He does way significantly less.
Well, that seems to be a factor. Why not? We'll get to that here in just a little bit. But as I mentioned, your coordinator hires are official. You can jump in if you want with your thoughts, with your comments, your concerns. 615-737-1045 is the number. You also have the F&M Bank chat if you would choose to interact on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. So we've already vetted both of these individuals in Nick Holtz. I feel like I've been saying Holes until we got the official pronunciation from the team yesterday. Holtz, even though there's no T, the former Jags assistant. And Denard Wilson, who is going to be the defensive coordinator here, first-time defensive coordinator here, the former Ravens secondary coach. So we've talked about these gentlemen before. We have talked about Wilson, I think, in more glowing terms, based on the fact that he was a viable candidate for 3 other teams besides this one that he interviewed with: Packers, Rams, Giants, all teams that had interest in Denard Wilson. Ultimately, he chooses Tennessee. You see that as a part of the news cycle around the reporting of this, that he had options and he chose this one. Wilson does not have any specific experience with Brian Callahan beyond going against him in the division, so I'm sure they know each other. But as far as previous work experience together, it's Wilson and Rand Carthon that have that connection during his time with the Rams. Then there is Holtz, who is the former Jags assistant, as I mentioned. Jags offense kind of underwhelmed relative to expectation last year, and there's a variety of different reasons why that happened. They still finished 9th in passing, 13th in total points per game, 22.2 were the Jags last year. He's had previous OC experience, though it was in college at UNLV, as we've previously discussed, and was in the league for a decade prior with the Raiders, where he and Callahan crossed paths. Of course, previously having gone to high school together, which we know for some of you is a sticking point.
Was retained by 4 different head coaches during his time in Oakland and Vegas.
That is a pretty nice feather in your cap as far as collaboration goes. You have to learn to collaborate with, yeah, there it is. There it is. It's always lurking somewhere in the background, the C word. But yes, you have the coordinators official. Now, they haven't announced Bill Callahan, the team specifically, right? You've known that these guys are going to be your coordinators for the better part of a week, and you know some of the assistants that they've started to fill out underneath them, but officially put out in a press release by the team yesterday. So there's that. Now with the Vrabel stuff. So what was your first reaction when you started to see? When did you see this start to make the rounds yesterday? Because it got aggregated, and it got aggregated in a hurry because it's an objectively ridiculous clip. So Diana, who regularly appears on this radio show, I texted her yesterday. All I got back in the response was, "I hate aggregators," which made me laugh out loud. Because I was wanting to know, all right, where do I find this clip? Because I keep getting tagged in it on Instagram. There's a bunch of these aggregator accounts that are saying Diana Rossini of The Athletic is saying that Mike Vrabel's stature played a role in him not finding a job in 2024. I said, what the hell does that mean? Okay. So, in this clip from The Athletic's football show, a podcast that you can find wherever you get your podcasts, they're talking about the coaching cycle. It's Diana and Robert Mays, who work for The Athletic. And so they finally get, it's about 25 minutes in, they get to Vrabel and Belichick and why those two individuals did not land head coaching jobs in this cycle and what might be viable options for them moving forward. Do you have the clip?
I sure do.
Okay, let's hear it.
What is your sense of why, like, Vrabel doesn't have a head coaching job right now?
I don't think that there was a fit for him. I don't think he sat in front of any owner who thought that his style was going to work for what they were looking for. Do you know I had a GM at the Senior Bowl who mentioned to me Vrabel's physical build, that he's a very large human being and can be very intimidating to people in an organization that are going to be part of these decisions. And that is a factor, which I laughed. I said, stop, that's not something that's real. Who cares what someone physically looks like? And he said, I'm just telling you, I've been in rooms and somebody's physical presence can make a difference.
Okay. So she goes on to say, because it does cut off there, she goes on to talk about how it's not just about the physical stature, right? I'm just telling you, I've been in rooms. Somebody's physical presence can make a difference. When you heard this clip for the first time, what was your reaction?
Laughter, like most anyone else.
Sure. But it's not like a Carissa Thompson thing. Like, Diana didn't just make this up and say it on a podcast, okay? Yeah. So let's start there.
Not laughter at Diana coming out with a ridiculous statement or take. This isn't Diana's opinion or take. I believe that a general manager said this to Diana Rossini at the Senior Bowl. It's ridiculous that a general manager could think that way. Now, there's probably something to be said for Mike Vrabel's demeanor and the way he wants things done within a program or franchise that he's the head coach. And yeah, Vrabel's an intimidating guy, but that was in a world of professional football where there are big, strong, scary people all over the place. I found it hilarious that was cited by a GM as a factor in Mike Vrabel not being a good fit somewhere.
Yeah, but the big, strong, scary people all over the place, you can keep a thumb on to an extent if you're a GM, right? Mike's different. Because it's not just about how big he looks, because Dan Campbell's also a mammoth human being, right? And Dan Campbell, I don't even know what to do with him, because he is one of these giant, hulking, massive human beings that's entirely over-caffeinated and way too fired up about trivial things in his day-to-day. But also he feels like it's kind of like a giant dog, right? Like one of these giant, like, fluffy dogs that just immediately collapses in front of you and just wants you to rub its belly, right? That's what Dan Campbell kind of gives off.
Yeah, like a Marmaduke type of dog.
Marmaduke.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Did not have a Marmaduke.
A Great Dane.
A Great Dane is...
but it's just the sweetest dog on the planet.
How old are you, Marmaduke? What? That's something my grandmother used to read in a local newspaper in the comments, or the comics section.
You should have read what he was up to Sunday morning. It was classic. But
Marmaduke.
Whoever this GM is, sounds like that if Mike Vrabel worked for him, he'd be afraid that Vrabel will stuff him in a locker because he drafted a receiver in the second round instead of a corner Vrabel wanted. Like, what are we talking about?
No, but based off reports, Lucas, it's not that far off, right? I mean, here's the thing, okay? The reason I struggle with this quote is because, and there are multiple instances of the NFL just generally being hypocritical. Shocking to no one. But in a sport where toughness, physicality, conviction of your beliefs, on top of all the other things, are essential to your survival in this sport as a player, that all of those qualities would be looked upon in a 3-time Super Bowl winning 14-year NFL linebacker and say, yeah, it's too much for me. I can't deal with this guy. I can't deal with this guy. He's too much. That it could be a factor on top of who Mike is believable, right? Like you just talked about. He's an intimidating guy. When he walks into the room, you know damn well that he's there because he's going to let you know damn well that he's there, right? So coupled with everything about how it ended here and the fact that owners talk and general managers talk and scouts talk to one another, that's all the Senior Bowl is. Beyond the scouting, it's just all of these people that run the league drunk in bars together gossiping. That's what the Senior Bowl and the Combine are. It is objectively hilarious. Like, all right, can you play the reckless speculation sound, please? Let's take a guess which GM said it to her. Let's pull up on Google.
Googling shortest GM in the NFL.
Who looks like they are the most insecure human being that's currently presiding over an NFL football team? Who might it be? Because I don't think a lot of people like immediately bring to mind who the Texans general manager is, right?
Nick Caserio.
Now, maybe the Texans are a bad example because we've talked about Jack Easterby and Nick Caserio and Deshaun Watson a lot on this particular show. I don't know how many people would necessarily be able to name off the top of their heads Eric DeCosta, right? He's the Ravens GM. So maybe GMs don't exactly fly to the front of your mind, to the top of your mind when you're trying to picture these guys who are running these organizations. But I'm desperately trying to scroll through all the GMs in my head who have made podium appearances at the Combine that I've been to in the last couple of years and trying to pick out the most insecure looking one. Do you have any in front of you that you think are good nominees?
Hey Siri, how tall is Andrew Barry?
The Browns GM. So 6'4".
Oh, he's 6'6"? No. Okay, never mind. That's a different Andrew Barry. That's a European basketball player.
Okay, this is going to be a failed exercise. Let's not do the Siri thing because last time I tried it, she just didn't say anything back to me, but we still got results. Either way. Alex says Monty Ossenfort. Now, Lucas, you've been around Monty. Maybe you don't remember being around Monty because of the Combine and Kirby was too busy telling war stories to, every coaching staff in the league that would listen to him. But Monty Ossenfort is not like a small individual. It's so funny. It's so funny to me. But beyond like the narrative around him this offseason since he's been fired is that he wants too much control and that he is not necessarily the type that you can control, coupled with the fact that he's bigger than you. That all of those things would be a bigger reason or a part of a reason that Mike Vrabel didn't get a job. I don't know. It's hilarious. The clip is hilarious. Whoever that GM, I hope whoever that GM is praying to the football gods or thanking the football gods that their name did not get publicly released as part of that, because how small can you be? Micro even. Anyway. Shane Bowen and Tim Kelly both have jobs as of this morning. They're both with the same team. They're joining 3 other Titans coaches in the same city where 2 of these NFL franchises exist. We're going to talk about the Giants and the Jets and why they are fascinated with former Titan staffers coming up next. So a lot of Titans former staffers under Mike Vrabel starting to take new jobs. Titans still working through the process of filling out their own coaching staff. Under Brian Callahan, what happened? Did we already forget? We just talked about this. No Toby Keith?
Oh, yeah, I did. It slipped my mind. You're right. We got to go Toby the rest of the way.
Lucas. We just talked about this. I have a whole playlist. I'm excited. Are you a big country music fan?
I am a country music fan. I'm not a big country music fan. I'm not listening to country music radio, and I hate a lot of what country music has become.
Sure.
But Toby Keith is a fantastic example of someone that sort of forayed into that modern era of country, right? The Red Solo Cup, like party songs, but never lost the soul of like old school country that Toby was so good at. Yeah, R.I.P. That was terrible news. You're right. We're going Toby Keith the rest of the way.
I literally walked in here and said, I have to insist that we go Toby Keith all day today. And then there's a Kid Cudi instrumental there waiting for me to get me back into the program.
I've had to process several things since you said that statement. So believe me, that went into the back of my mind.
Okay, I'm sorry. What is not in the back of Titans fans' minds, it seems, is where their former staffers are landing. But I did think that this one was interesting. Shane Bowen got a big boy job. Okay? The New York Giants, whatever they have been in terms of competitiveness, basically since Eli Manning was still a competent starting level quarterback in the NFL. Like the Giants made the playoffs last year. Brian Daboll was the coach of the year. They got a salvageable season out of Saquon Barkley, a healthy season out of Saquon Barkley, and a salvageable season out of Daniel Jones. And the Giants, looked like they might be poised to do something. And then the bottom fell out this year. They had injuries all over the place, and they were dreadful. It's still a big-time job in a major media market with huge expectations on who they're going to hire. And Wink Martindale was previously the defensive coordinator in New York, or for the Giants, we should say. Bowen getting this job, going to be the DC of New York after interviewing for, I believe he interviewed for the Jags and did not get that job.
Correct.
Getting this Giants gig is a testament to his ability beyond just Jim Schwartz, beyond just Mike Vrabel, and their various influences, good, bad, or indifferent, on him. Because I think that's been a question for a lot of Titans fans. Like, how much is Shane Bowen actually doing? Wouldn't you say? And we've talked about this because 2020 was weird. They just wouldn't name him the defensive coordinator. Then in 2021, I guess it's okay. We'll name him the defensive coordinator. They have, good to... I don't want to say that they were great as a defense because they had flaws every year. 2021 was probably the best year the defense under Shane Bowen had. And since then, it's gotten worse for a couple of different reasons.
It's been a big part of their identity. That has not wavered in the last 3 years of the Vrabel era.
So when you see him get a job like this, because they were last, like dead last, 32 last season. No, the Titans. The Titans allowed 335.5 yards per game last year. Do you know that? Last.
That makes the red zone defense number even crazier.
Insane.
Because of the volume at which they were allowing teams into the red zone and the amount of yards they were giving up to then stiffen up and get those stops for the number one red zone defense. That's crazy.
It's not just that they were giving up these explosive plays. It wasn't just your mind saying, oh my God, every third and long, they give it up. No, they were actually allowing the most yards per game last season in the regular season. 21.6 points allowed per game was 16th in the league. The red zone defense, still by percentage, one of the best based on the number of attempts the team got got against them in the red zone.
It was the definition of bend, don't break, the 2023 Titans defense.
Well, the problem is they started out at a 90-degree angle, the bend.
Yeah.
On the Titans.
You're bending too much.
So, Vidal says, are you the number one red zone defense if you're taken to the red zone the most times? Yes.
Yes.
In fact, you
Makes
get to
it
be
much better.
You get to be even more impressive as a red zone defense if you are that terrible between the 20s, and all of a sudden, inside of 20, you're the 85 Bears, right? Like, you're the best defense in football. And listen, it is harder to play offense in the red zone, so it's skewed to the defense anyway. But still, to be the number one red zone defense and have the 32nd you ranked offense in terms of total yards allowed per game is crazy. It's crazy.
If their red zone offense had been even half as good as the red zone defense was, I mean, you're talking about 3-4 more games won this past season. This is a high-pressure job for Shane Bowen.
It's huge.
Like, Brian Daboll has to get this right after the way it ended with Wink Martindale.
Because for those of you who don't remember the details, Brian Daboll was at a podium at the end of the Giants season multiple times saying that Wink Martindale was going to be retained, okay? Apparently, there was some kind of internal blow-up between the two. The situation became tenable no longer for Brian Daboll and Wink Martindale. They fired Wink Martindale. Now, New York, who has a bunch of different issues and has had a decent defense in the last couple of years, that's been one of the more surprising things, and honestly feeds into a little bit of that, could Christian Fulton come back and have a better career here for the Titans under a different coaching staff? Do you know how much better Adoree Jackson was after he left here? Do you remember how weird the Adoree thing was at the end? Where he was supposed to be able to play week like 5 or 6 against the Steelers, and then they didn't get him out there. His window was open to return to the team. It then expired. They had to take him off injured reserve, and still it took a couple of weeks to get him on the field against the Green Bay Packers at the end of the season. So anyway, long story short, that's an example of a player going on to have success that maybe didn't make the most sense under Mike Vrabel or didn't vibe with the Vrabel type of stuff. But the Giants' defensive coordinator job is a job with huge stakes because Brian Daboll has already, you don't want to say scapegoated Wink Martindale, but you've already fired one defensive coordinator and got to keep your job. Matt Eberflus in Chicago, firing his coordinators, gets to keep his job, gets another crack at this thing, and does have the number one overall pick again. I'm so fascinated to see how that defense in New York, because they've got pieces. Dexter Lawrence is not Jeff Simmons, but he's been really damn good. He was a Pro Bowler again this year. I don't know. Do the Titans play the NFC East this year? I guess they just played them recently. I want to say they played the NFC East in the 2024 opponents. We can look that up later, just out of curiosity. But like seeing how the Titans, with examples of going up against former coaches and stuff like this, with this new coaching staff, manage. Because as we talked about, they didn't retain Shane Bowen, but you could have made a case to do it, especially if you're Brian Callahan looking at how poorly your Bengals offenses performed against the Titans defenses when Bowen was the coordinator. Just something to keep an eye on. Do you think it's funny that Tim Kelly is also there too as the tight ends coach, and that Downing, Tony Dews, and Keith Carter are all with the Jets? They're all working out of the same stadium. They don't have the same practice facilities, but they're all in East Rutherford.
Ryan Cowden works for the Giants, correct?
Yep, he's there.
And the Titans are interviewing former Giants special teams coordinator Thomas McGahee for the special teams job here in Tennessee.
Are you confident in that name? Did you look it up?
I have done enough research to where I am confident.
Okay. Or is this another Studsville type of situation?
Well, you got that one wrong. You can't put that on me.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I had Studesville, and you were convicted in saying, no, it's Studsville.
I don't think that's true.
It's Studsville.
I think it was the opposite, in fact. I think I had it right and you had it wrong.
Check the tape.
I can't.
Throw the challenge flag.
Somebody says, so Vrabel Giants head coach in 2025? I don't know, but it's going to be interesting when these teams get the opportunity to play each other with the coaching staffs and how they have changed various roles. Tim Kelly goes to New York to be the tight ends coach here. They did technically perform better as an offense on the whole under Kelly than they did in Downing's last season. But going from 17.5 points per game to 17.9 points per game is still anemic. I had so much higher hopes for that dude here. And it's going to be a different role for Nick Holtz, right? Going to be a different role for Nick Holtz. But Tim Kelly, starting the season, and we had no idea. We had some feeling that the roster had legit flaws. We knew the offensive line thing right out of the gate. But that Tim Kelly, I don't know. Do you think that Tim Kelly got a raw deal at all? One season, terrible roster, head coach that's, causing problems beyond what's just on the field. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have moved in this direction anyway. Just like in retrospect, I was curious to see if that dude could do anything because he has had success as an offensive coordinator in the league.
I don't think Tim Kelly just doesn't know how to call plays anymore.
Which is what is being alleged by a portion of the fan base.
I think he was kind of put into this box of A, personnel, and B, the identity, which goes hand in hand, right? Running the ball. Do you think that Tim Kelly was the one in that Texans game that was adamant that the Titans keep running Derrick Henry 16 times for 9 yards? Because in the past, they've broken one in those situations, and that was their best plan, that let's keep giving it to Henry, and maybe he'll break one? Has Tim Kelly ever had that type of identity as a play caller in his career?
Now, for context, who gave that quote?
Mike Vrabel, post-game. Mm-hmm. So I do think Tim Kelly was hamstrung by a few things this past season. I'm
inclined to agree. Like I said, doesn't mean that the Titans shouldn't have made all the moves that they did with Holtz and with Callahan and Tim Kelly moving on. That's all well and good. I still wonder what could have been under less constraining circumstances for Tim Kelly. We'll never know. 615-737-1045 is the number. What in sports made you say, oh, no, this weekend? Make sure that you have your nominees. We're going to get to some of those a little later on. I'm looking forward to having Teresa Walker in studio. We always like having T in studio. But we're going to do something today because the title of the show, for those of you who are live streaming it, is about Amy Adams Strunk being in legacy mode. There's a lot. I was thinking about this last night, something that I want to talk to T about, among other things. What the controlling owner of the Titans is signaling at this point in her tenure, having a groundbreaking now officially announced for the stadium on the 29th. February 29th is when that's happening. We do have a release on that. We didn't really get into the details on all of it because I had a handful of people, Lucas, ask me, I'm sure you got tweets to the same effect, if this was going to be something that was open to the public. I think there are some portions of it. We didn't really get into the news release that they sent out about the stadium groundbreaking, though. But Amy getting that done at this point in her tenure as the controlling owner, talking about bringing Lombardi trophies to Nashville, building a stadium that is going to inevitably host a Super Bowl at whatever point it gets done in the very, very near future after it's done, wanting her team to kind of, what did she say, meet the moment? Them collectively meet the moment?
She said, we will meet the moment.
We will meet the moment, right? So it's a lot of like grander ideas from the ownership. And this is a pretty pivotal decision, so it's not uncommon for those kind of messages to be hammered home by ownership, right? We have championship expectations. We have championship standards. We are going to meet the moment is not like, this is not groundbreaking stuff for an owner to say when they make a coaching change. But I do think on the timeline for her, this is an entertainment city at its core. And that the larger theme from the customers lately has been, hey, make it better or we'll find something else to do. She's got to have a product that's as compelling as her new stadium.
And she knows what it's like when people are finding something else to do.
Oh, sure.
Because it was only about a decade ago, a little less, that was the case here.
Well, and she's the one who took charge and said, all right, enough of this bleep, right? 2015 is when she takes over as the controlling owner, because that was right when I first got here. I remember the discourse on local sports talk when I was coming to town trying to kind of get my bearings was, who the hell is running this team? Roger Goodell wants to know who's running this team. They need a controlling owner, a face, to make decisions on behalf of the Tennessee Titans as one of 32 organizations in the NFL. Who the hell is running this team? Make a decision or we're going to make one for you. Everything that she's done since then has raised the standard of what this thing is around here. And Teresa is one of the few people who have sat down and spoke with her in a one-on-one setting, that having been when she fired John Robinson. So I'm looking forward to talking to T about that, about the direction that the franchise is headed, because she's covered it for 25 years. That's at 11:20 today. What in sports made you say, oh, no? That's coming up next. That's more like it. Man, it always sucks when you start to see some of your favorite artists start trending on Apple Music or Spotify. It probably means that somebody's passed away and people are starting to come back around to their music. Toby Keith passed away this morning. Stomach cancer, man. That's brutal. In his 60s, mid-60s. Too young.
Early 60s.
Yeah, 64?
62.
62. Oof. Awful. I mean, how many different, like, beat your chest type of patriotic pride songs does Toby Keith have? Like, he has the market cornered, yeah? On those stick our boot up your ass,
Yeah.
It's the American way type of stuff, right? Like,
No one has more than him.
yes.
100%.
So we will do Toby Keith all day.
Everybody has a different favorite Toby Keith song, you know?
What's yours?
We'll play it. We'll play it in the next hour.
Okay. Well,
And As Good As I Once Was, for sure.
oh man. See, my favorite version of Toby Keith is the Bleep You Toby Keith. Like, so maybe we'll play Lucas's in the second hour. We'll play mine later on. Because there's just so many good Toby Keith songs. Anyway, what in sports made you say, oh no, hit the music? Up.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Real simple. What'd you see in sports? Who got dunked on? Who got put on a poster? Who got embarrassed beyond recognition? What in sports made you say, oh no, this week? So we have another Turfgate situation. Have you been paying attention what's going on with the San Francisco 49ers and the UNLV practice fields?
Yes, it's been quite the topic in Vegas.
So everybody gets out to the Super Bowl. Media contingents have since started to arrive because Super Bowl media night did you see the scene? And we knew that this was going to be bigger and badder and better because it's Vegas. And no expense would be spared with the NFL in Vegas. But like the Chiefs announcement as the defending Super Bowl champions with Buffer on the microphone and like Cirque du Soleil cast leading them out. It's almost like a carnival experience type of stuff. It's very Vegas. Anyway, so the Niners are practicing at UNLV. The Chiefs, because they're the home team in the Super Bowl, are practicing at the Raiders practice facility, which is gorgeous. It's a $75 million state-of-the-art, beautiful. I don't know where Mark Davis is getting the money. He must be cutting back on the bowl cuts or whatever, because this is allegedly one of the most cash-poor owners in football.
I kind of hate that. I get that there has to technically be a home team. I don't think I like that the home team gets that advantage of practicing in an NFL facility when the Niners have to go over to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
So apparently the practice field is insufficient for the Niners. Now, Kyle Shanahan came out and said, whatever, our practices are going to go on as scheduled, yada, yada, nothing to see here. But behind the scenes, apparently they're pissed. We had a Super Bowl a couple of years ago. It was 2021. I'm pretty sure this was Arizona, right? Or I guess this was last year's Super Bowl. What was the Super Bowl that was decided because the turf was insufficient? They tried this new hybrid kind of grass out. And I want to say it was Bengals-Rams, but that would have been in Los Angeles and they don't play on a grass field. What was the Super Bowl played in Phoenix? Was this last year?
Yes. I think you're talking about last year, Eagles and Chiefs. I remember this being a huge topic last year.
So there's apparently this person called the Sod Father.
Yes.
All right. He's almost in his 90s, if he's not in his 90s, and he's responsible for some of the best grass growing techniques out there. They bring in the Sod Father as a consult. They have this new hybrid turf that they're going to try out at the Super Bowl. Last year, it ends up being a disaster. Players are slipping and sliding all over the place, and I think there's reason to believe that it helped decide the outcome of the Super Bowl. Who's to say? Now the Niners are saying, listen, this ground is too soft. We cannot practice on this. This is untenable. This is way, way worse than we expected to. Their ops crew and their equipment staff is trying to figure out how to get them the proper cleats and things like that to be able to manage this situation. But just the fact that this is the talking point right out of the gate of the Super Bowl, that one of the teams does not have a sufficient place to practice. How? This is the biggest. Is this not the biggest sport, like, of the North American sports, okay? Of the sports championships decided in North America, beyond the World Cup that will be here in 2026. Is this not the biggest event of the year?
Yes, easily.
The biggest sporting event of the year, yeah? And then a talking point is that somehow, some way, one of the two participants does not have sufficient enough practice.
Captain Wumbo on the F&M Bank chat says it's BS. Both Super Bowl teams should have equally nice practice fields.
Straight up. That's play the TikTok noise. It's my oh no this week.
My oh no of the sports weekend is John Calipari. Tennessee wins at Rupp Arena on Saturday. We've talked about it. 103-92. Kentucky back-to-back home losses. For the second time in the Calipari era. The other happened in the COVID year. All these numbers that you can go through, giving up 100 points to Tennessee in Rupp Arena for the first time ever. Kentucky's in a bad way right now. Their fan base is not feeling great about the state of the program, and there's no question that they've got the talent to bring it all together and make a big run in March, but I think Kentucky fans are tired of this charade that we do every year of Calipari having an insanely young but talented team and then talking after post-game losses at his press conference, like on Saturday, about how young they are and how much better they have to get. My oh no, though, is that John Calipari skipped out on his post-game radio interview.
Ooh.
And Kentucky assistant Orlando Antigua filled in for him. John Calipari, making close to $10 million a year.
Hot seat.
Lifetime contract. All of these things. Has now lost to Tennessee at home the same amount of times that Kentucky as a program lost to Tennessee at home from the years 1976 through 2015. And he couldn't show up for his post-game radio interview and sent one of his assistants to do it.
You don't like that, do you?
John Calipari.
Oh, no.
I have a prediction.
Oh, okay. Wait. I need the chat to timestamp the date, the time, depending on the level of prediction that we're talking about here. We don't do predictions very often as a show. This is a very important moment so that we can go back and find this prediction when it inevitably does not come true and we can drag Lucas together. All right, go.
I'm going to borrow from 3HL here. If Kentucky flames out in the SEC tournament and does not make it past the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, I think John Calipari will not be the head coach of Kentucky next season. I think they're sick of this. I think John Calipari prioritizes draft picks over championships, and I think the fan base is done. I think they're done seeing Kentucky flame out in the second round, lose to St. Peter's in the first weekend, and then flip on their TV a few weeks later, a couple months later, I suppose, seeing John Calipari hugging all the Kentucky draft picks at the NBA draft. I think they're sick of it. I think it will be over if the trend that we've seen over the last few years in Lexington continues this year in March with this talented of a Kentucky team being this poor and inconsistent defensively. I could be dead wrong, and they could be idiots to let him go. I'm sure many people would contend that that's the case, but I just think that that fan base is done if the same thing happens come March as it has in the last few years. And I don't know what that would mean. Maybe Elite Eight or better is the only thing that would have Kentucky fans back on board. I don't know.
An Elite Eight would be tough to fire him if he made the Elite Eight. They, depending on how it goes, right? Like, if Kentucky does the thing that we talk about year in and year out, you're correct. I'm assuming that Wildcat fans are tired of it. And we joke around here because Lucas went to Tennessee, I went to Indiana, and so the thing that unites us is the hatred of Kentucky, okay? But as a college basketball institution, I have so much respect for that program. They are as important to the history of college basketball, which is my favorite sport, as any program that you could name. So I'm not, when we talk about this, it's not just out of pettiness and poking fun at Wildcats fans at Big Blue Nation, because this is a hugely important job in the landscape of college basketball.
Kentucky in town tonight, by the way, 7:30 tip at Memorial Gym against Vanderbilt.
Who's coming off a win against Missouri, who is terrible in the SEC, but it's hard to win on the road. Can you imagine? What happens if Cal loses tonight? I don't think there's any way in hell that Kentucky loses to Vanderbilt. But
Yeah, that's
stranger
tough to
things have
imagine.
happened in college basketball. Stranger things have happened. I don't know. Something to keep an eye on. Please fire him so I can have him. I'll take your sloppy seconds. Please, God, fire Coach Cal so I can have him. Oh, my God. I would lose my mind. Then Indiana would inevitably hire somebody who's way, way worse and leave Cal out there for somebody else to pick up, and I just, continue my tailspin as a fan. Anyway. Super Bowl Media Night, always a bleep show. The Eagles are opening in one of Lucas's favorite places in the world. We'll talk about what came out of Super Bowl Media Night coming up next.
It is 11:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. As Brian Callahan continues to put together his Titans coaching staff, the team officially announced the hiring of offensive coordinator Nick Holtz and defensive coordinator Denard Wilson on Monday. The Titans are also interviewing former Giants special teams coordinator Thomas McGahee for their special teams job, according to Mike Garafolo. Former Titans staffers are finding new landing spots around the league. The New York Giants have hired former Titans DC Shane Bowen to call the defensive plays on Brian Daboll's staff. Former Titans offensive coordinator Tim Kelly has also been tabbed as the Giants' next tight ends coach. Roger Goodell held a press conference on Monday in Vegas, his annual State of the League address. Goodell confirmed that the NFL will play in São Paulo, Brazil, to kick off the 2024 season with the Eagles as the host team. Their opponent is unknown. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Right before I turned my microphone on, Lucas, I got an email notification that rang aloud in this studio. Bullet dodged by me. Welcome back to the show. That's Lucas Panzica. He's hanging out back there making it happen. 615-737-1045 is the number. Teresa Walker going to join us in studio here in just about 20 minutes. We'll talk Titans with the APs. I mean, she runs the state of Tennessee for the AP. Whether it's Vols, Titans, Grizzlies, Preds, Teresa Walker covers it all. So we'll look forward to having T in studio with us. Is she doing this year's Super Bowl? Have we talked to her about this? I know she's doing the Olympics coming up here in not that far away.
Well, I have good news.
What?
She'll be here in about 10 minutes. We can ask her all these things.
I just figured, maybe we did some research before Teresa was coming in here. Maybe Teresa, I don't know, provided us some talking points of things she wanted us to mention. I don't know. Who's to say?
She's also been doing a lot of work on this NCAA versus Tennessee situation.
Well, we'll get her thoughts. Certainly, she has connections to Knoxville as well. Super Bowl Media Night did take place last night. It was true to form, a total scene. I saw that Lawan and Compton out there with Bussin are making the rounds, asking Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes all kinds of weird questions. Did you see that somebody asked Mahomes? This probably should have been my oh no. Somebody asked Mahomes to do his best Kermit the Frog impression.
Goodness.
What do you mean? That was something my grandparents would say. Oh my goodness.
That's
oh,
funny.
honey.
That would have been a great oh no.
He responded in stride because he's done a lot of these at this point. Super Bowl. You've never been to a Super Bowl media night, but you've been to something that's I don't want to even compare it. It's not even an apt comparison. The setup at the Combine though is kind of similar to this, where you're all in a giant room where there's 12 people on a podium all talking at one time. And you can scurry around and talk to whomever you want and ask redundant questions because surely to God they haven't already been asked the question that you're getting ready to ask them. At Super Bowl Media Day, though, it's a little different. At the Combine, it's just NFL reporters who don't watch college football asking college football players questions, which does lead to some funny interactions like, which Byron Young are you? At Super Bowl Media Night, you have people dressed as Spider-Man holding microphones attached to broken hockey sticks into the face of the sport's biggest stars, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, asking them questions like, hey, Pat, give us your best Kermit the Frog impression, okay? This is the level of discourse that takes place at Super Bowl Media Night. Not that it's not fun to watch. I wouldn't want to be personally involved in it. I wouldn't want to be in any of those scrums other than to catch one of the funny moments, but they're so few and far between. So there's really not a ton that comes out of Super Bowl Media Night that you get to learn, actually. What did come out of Super Bowl media night is Roger Goodell giving a press conference that was separate from the bleep show, from the circus that was the stadium. And there's a variety of different topics that are covered.
That's also starting to feel like rinse and repeat. I was watching it last night on ESPN, and I was sitting there like, I feel like I'm just watching last year's press conference.
Well, you know why this one is different. Because Jim Trotter is not there to ask him uncomfortable questions about the NFL's hiring practices because the NFL Network did not renew Jim Trotter's contract.
Well, you think he didn't get those questions? He got multiple questions of that nature.
I'm saying that they have tried to sanitize this press conference as much as humanly possible. Who was asking the questions last night to that effect?
I'm not sure. I can't remember the name of the reporter.
Well, that's fair. But one of the things to come out of that is that the NFL we knew was going to play in Brazil, but we know that the home team is going to be the Eagles. Now, Lucas is our Brazilian correspondent, I suppose, in some way, shape, or form. It sounds like something that should be played in the back of a Mario Kart game. So, yeah, are we sending you to Brazil? Is that how this is working for the NFL season opener? It's going to conflict with your 104.5 The Zone, high school game of the week on Friday nights because this is a Friday game as the NFL continues to gobble up literally every day of the week.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. My heart dropped when Goodell announced it would be on Friday night, week 1. So we'll have the Thursday night kickoff, Friday night in São Paulo with the Eagles and ex-opponent, and then the regular Sunday slate of games. And I will undoubtedly be doing a high school football broadcast somewhere around the mid-state. So, I'm going to have to watch it back, I suppose. I guess I'll have to DVR it and watch. Nobody tell me what happens.
So, as a country, Brazil's level of interest in American football, I can't imagine is...
0.
Okay. What is this?
From my experience, at least.
Okay. The level of importance for the country of Brazil to have the National Football League playing a game there. Brazil has hosted has been a host country for the Olympics. Like the World Cup, international soccer competition. Like this is not like the biggest sporting event to be hosted in the country of Brazil or anything like that. But what is the level of importance for Brazil to have more American flavored type of stuff as a part of what their experience is when you try to attract more people to come and visit Brazil as a part of tourism, as a part of economic impact? Like, I don't know that we've ever really dug into. We've gotten direct economic impact reports on things like the draft coming to Nashville. I'd be curious to know the level of economic impact that an NFL game has in an international market. That's not something that it's ever really occurred to me until just now.
Well, I have no doubts that it will be a sellout. No doubts. I mean, São Paulo is one of the 5 biggest cities on the planet. Mm-hmm. Corinthians Arena, where the game will be played, has a capacity of around 47,000. So it's not like you're asking to fill out the Maracanã in Rio or 100,000 person stadium type of thing. And I think there will be a lot of NFL fans traveling, and there may be NFL interest in a city as big as São Paulo. I'm sure there's a ton of Americans
transplants
live in a city as big as São Paulo. Sure. I can only speak from my experience and talking to my family about it, and friends that live in the U.S., family friends that live in the U.S. that are also from Brazil, and it's I guess apathy would be the way to describe it. Like that's happening, whatever,
Oh, fun. The Eagles. Maybe we go see an Eagles game.
So it'll be interesting. The interest is probably higher in, somewhere like London than it is in Brazil. And I don't know how high the interest is in London. I'm sure
they've been doing it for 25 years. I mean, at this point, like, Londoners expect that there will be multiple NFL games played at Wembley or Tottenham at this point.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a part of their annual. I mean, the point is to get it as a part of these countries' annual sporting calendar, right? To integrate yourself as a product into other places where you can then further your footprint for primarily economic purposes, financial gain, untapped markets where there are more people the NFL wants to be. it is, I mean, it's probably the most newsworthy thing because he was asked a bunch of Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce questions. Could you script it, Raj?
Officiating, rinse and repeat.
Yeah. There's no officiating crisis in the NFL. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, Roger. So this is the most newsworthy thing to come out of it. Do you think I'm always curious to know the response from this because the NFL, you've seen the reports about ESPN and the NFL potentially merging? Like the NFL absorbing ESPN to a degree as they strip ESPN down as an entity for Disney to probably sell. Do you not pay attention to anything that goes on in your industry?
I must have missed this.
Lucas, as somebody who is seeking a larger career in this particular space, it may benefit you to know the things that are going on as the world just continues to happen around you. I have it in here, a block at the end of the show, to talk about the fire of radioactive waste that was sitting on I-40. And Lucas looked at that in the grid, looked at me and said, "What radioactive fire? Brother, what? You are on the internet entirely too much. You're not like me where you just exist there, but you're on the internet entirely too much to be ignorant of all of this stuff."
Yeah, my algorithm does not necessarily prioritize real world news and events. I've come to learn.
Concert dates.
Yes.
Pasta recipes.
Pretty much. Yeah, you pretty much nailed it.
Brandon says, "I thought ESPN was going to be bought by Apple." Well, they're trying to make themselves. Here's the thing, okay? My larger point with this is there is a huge shift in the way that you, as an audience, are going to consume football, right? Beyond just the media inside baseball stuff. ESPN is trying to become a streaming service unto itself, yeah? Where Apple and Prime are bidding on live sports, have live sports, where Netflix is trying to get into the live sports game. So ESPN is trying to make itself as viable a product to a streamer or to a league as anything else, because right now Disney is losing money all over the place, and ESPN is one of the things that they basically need to flip. How this impacts you and how this relates to the NFL in Brazil is they're trying to find a way to make this an international product as fast as humanly possible, because that is what the streamers want. Lucas, what was you may not know the answer to this question, but I have a pretty good feeling that you'd be more educated on it than me. What was the level of impact that Messi had on Apple TV?
Oh, massive.
Right.
Massive. And we don't have those numbers, but there's no question that was whatever you're picturing, bigger than that.
Sure.
Right?
So that is an international superstar providing international level subscriptions to a product that is not just based in the U.S., right? Apple TV is everywhere. Amazon Prime is everywhere, or is trying to be everywhere. American football is not. So they're trying to get themselves into a space where, hey, Apple, Prime, you want more of our product? Roger Goodell said yesterday that the Super Bowl would not be a streaming-only product under his tenure. But, I mean, so CBS has the Super Bowl this year. Actually, why don't we talk about this coming up next? Because I've got some larger thoughts on this and not enough time to do it. So we'll get into this. Teresa Walker will also Teresa's going to be here. So let me just make the point quickly. CBS has the Super Bowl this year. At some point, if you're CBS, NBC, or Fox, don't you look around and say, "We will give you so much more money if you will let us put this on our streaming service. If you'll let us put the Super Bowl on Peacock. If you'll let us make the Super Bowl a pay-per-view event." They had more. Do you know how many subscribers they had on Peacock prior to the Kansas City Dolphins game, the playoff game? Somewhere in the neighborhood of like 8 million. 23 million people watched that playoff game on Peacock. That's the value that the NFL brings to these streaming services on a national level. Why they're trying to branch out this way is because they want international appeal.
Well, did you see what Roger Goodell said when he was asked about the possibility of the Super Bowl being stream only in the future?
Lucas. Do the bit.
Not following.
I know. That's the point. Tom Pelissero is reporting the 2 Indianapolis Colts defensive backs have been suspended for gambling-related issues.
I feel like it goes against what your whole point is then. feel like it goes against your entire point about
You
what the
looked
NFL is
at
trying
me
to do.
and shook your head as I said that Roger Goodell said yesterday that the Super Bowl would never be streaming only in his tenure. You looked at me in the eyes. You nodded your head in agreement, and then you repeated the same line not 2 sentences later. Got a break.
That's not what happened.
Got a break. So this isn't your favorite Toby Keith song. Teresa Walker of the Associated Press is here with us in studio. This is your second favorite Toby Keith song?
Second favorite. I'm sorry, but I should have been a cowboy. Talking about Marshall Dillon and Miss Kitty. I mean, I was a kid that grew up watching Gunsmoke because, yes, I'm older generation.
No, I think, listen, Gunsmoke transcends because for every person of the Gunsmoke generation that watched Gunsmoke is how I will very carefully phrase that.
Very carefully.
With Teresa
Well done.
within striking distance of me.
Yes, I could hurt you.
Yes, that's true. I feel like for every person who grew up watching Gunsmoke, there is also a generation of grandkids who, when their grandparents rewatch Gunsmoke and, Matlock and MASH and all these other shows, like I feel like I grew up watching the same shows that my grandparents did or that my parents did because my grandparents always have like TV Land on or something like that.
Well, that's the thing. And I have to admit, you mentioned MASH. Before I went to the Olympics in Korea, I somehow got caught back up in watching all of MASH yet again.
Oh, my God.
I mean, I'm sorry, but there are some shows from the 70s that are timeless. And, but Gunsmoke, Miss Kitty, I mean, should have been a cowboy. It was a great first big hit for Toby Keith. But then, I Love This Bar. I mean, that one. I grew up as a kid in Chicago, and there are literally bars in the middle of neighborhoods, in the middle of the block. And even when I was a 2-year-old kid, I'd get people to walk me across the street to the bar because... Not to drink, people. Please clean up your minds. I would get a free Coke and chips because they love the moxie of the kid who got across the street and freaked out her mom. And then later, when I was a little bit older, I'd go with my dad after being at the garage, and he'd get a shot and a beer. And I was about 4, and I'd do the shot. And they couldn't believe the little kid could do a shot, and so they'd bring another one, and I'd do another shot. So, yes, I love bars, and that was a great song.
We'll surprise no one that my favorite Toby Keith song is How Do You Like Me Now?
Oh, no.
It's very much on brand. We'll play it later.
Yes, it's very much on brand for you.
Oh, what are you going to do? Teresa Walker is here. So before we talk Titans, because there's an interesting discussion that Teresa is one of the few people that's actually equipped to have it with us. Given that we are, a product of our generation and lacking a lot of historical context for stuff that is important to remember. The Tennessee lawsuit, you are currently in the middle of covering that on top of all of your regularly scheduled duties. What has that been like for you the last week?
Lots of refreshing, learning to, I started out my career covering local courts in Blount County, East Tennessee. So police beat, things like that. And I'll just say this, good training for being a sports reporter. And yesterday we had the ruling from the National Labor Relations Board with Dartmouth saying, yes, they can have a union vote and be employees of the university. So it's like, guess what? The NCAA is taking flack from all directions at this point, but it's literally updating. On Saturday, I was updating and refreshing and spent 2 hours once the NCAA response was filed in response to the Tennessee lawsuit and why they should not be granted a TRO. And, of course, on Sunday, when Tennessee responded, it was literally, as I was heading out the door, we had a birthday family dinner for my husband with the family at a restaurant that's pricey enough that I am not missing this. So thankfully, my colleague, Rael Russo, it's like, I've got the document. I emailed it to him and I said, can you handle it? And thank God he could because, the Tennessee AG came in strong. Essentially saying that they're trying to live in a world that doesn't exist anymore. And that's the challenge. And as Tom Mars, who's the attorney that reps Spire Sports, the volunteer group, he's been very vocal on social media. And he pointed out that the current NCAA president said in November, we don't have any NIL rules right now. And the NCAA is trying to enforce something. So this is going to be interesting.
So the court date coming up is February 13th.
In Greenville, baby. I'm going to have to waze that one because I've never been to Greenville. I've been to every part of the state, but not Greenville.
bucket list for Teresa Walker.
Yeah.
So
No, not really.
can you
Respectfully to our listeners in Greenville.
yes, of course. Can you give us just kind of a rundown of what needs to be accomplished on February 13th in Greenville, Tennessee, because that is the next step in this whole process?
Well, the next step, Lucas, is actually the decision on the TRO, the temporary restraining order that they've asked for. That's what those arguments that were filed Saturday and Sunday, arguing against, arguing for, is asking for the temporary restraining order. And they want it today. Why? Tomorrow's National Signing Day, the second National Signing Day period. So that's why they want the TRO. Then the restraining order, the injunction, preliminary injunction, that's the hearing on the 13th. And if they get that preliminary injunction, it's as I understand it, it essentially is putting on hold any of the the enforcement of NCAA rules in regards to NIL.
Which is what we want, right? That's the chaos. Like for us as media vultures, me and Lucas, not you, of course. We want the actual no rules environment. I'm so down for that for a couple of months.
Well, the funny thing is they keep trying to insist. Well, we told them that these rules were going to apply, but after the fact, almost, Tennessee grant Tennessee credit. They were one of the very first to jump into the NIL landscape of the Wild Wild West, and the NCAA actually tried to say on Saturday. No, it's not the Wild Wild West. We did say that these rules were mattering and that, if you did these things, you're a booster. And look at all the members of the Vol group. They are Tennessee alum. And it's like, they're trying to, say, no. We've always counted people as boosters if you give athletes money. And, they've made it very clear. Listen, we signed Nico, and I am not going to butcher his name again. But,
Have you?
Somebody accused me of that the other day. And it's like, I trust me. I'm using that pronouncer as much as I can to become comfortable with it, but I know how to spell it. That's what matters most for me.
Oh, I don't think I could spell it. I can say it. I don't know that I could spell it.
I absolutely can spell it. IAM. Never mind. We'll move on. It's a good thing to save and copy
You went to the
and paste.
microphone with so much confidence.
Yes, I did, and then I had to start thinking about it.
Speed bump. Oh no.
Yes, I hit it hard and I bounced everything all over the car. But, that's the thing, that they signed him before the rules came out. And then they say, but if you sign guys, we're going to count you as boosters. And so they're trying to retroactively say, no, we really did have rules. And that's what the Tennessee AG, the Virginia AG, and give Tennessee credit. They have come out of the gate organized. I mean, think about it. They had this meeting last Monday, and Donde Plowman, the chancellor of Tennessee, fires out that email to Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA. No background in college sports. He is a former governor of the state of Massachusetts. And she's like, we tried to talk to you in December. You turned us down. You denied us a meeting. So for all this, we're the members. You made up the rules. You're our members. You're the ones who approve these things. And then that gets released and leaked on, and I'm a little ticked. I had to text somebody at Tennessee and he's like, who are you? And it's like, I'm the person who emailed you this morning asking for anything that would be released in regards to this situation. So send me that email right now. Now, ASAP. And, and then the very next day, you've got the lawsuit being filed bright and early in the morning by the AGs. Then on Thursday, you've got Danny White with his statement. And I mean, Tennessee cooperated fully with the Pruitt situation. They have made it incredibly clear, no, we're fighting on this hill.
Teresa Walker of the Associated Press is hanging out in studio with us. All right, so from Vols to Titans. Teresa, just quickly for the audience, you have covered the Tennessee Titans as an organization since when?
Well, I covered them since the moment they had moving boxes over at TSU before their first training camp in 1997. I helped cover the entire transition of the franchise from Houston to Tennessee. And, oh, yes, all the voting, the Yes Nashville campaign to get the bonds approved to build the current stadium before that happened. So I've been paying close attention to this organization for a very long time.
So that context is important because Lucas and I do not have that depth of knowledge with the organization and its ground roots to how it came here to ultimately be the Tennessee Titans after the Houston Oilers and Tennessee Oilers. Shifts in the franchise's direction. There have been a few flashpoints across the timeline of the last 25 years since this organization has been here. Vrabel to Callahan feels like a pretty big one on who they are, what they are going to be, what they have been previously for, I mean, even prior to Mike's arrival here, a certain style of football team. It feels like we're on the doorstep of it becoming something very different. And I wonder how many times in your career covering them you felt that level of philosophical shift.
Well, with what we think is going to be a much heavier passing game, well, 2019 was, they were in the top 5, tied for 4th in most points and 2nd in the NFL in yards. And that was a year where they, had 2 decent receivers and some guy named A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. That was pretty productive. But go back to the Steve McNair days when they actually finally let them go. I counted it up. There's been I think 11 1,000-yard receiving seasons. And, the best before, they actually had a pair of, 1,000-yard receivers in one season. Drew Bennett and Derek Mason. Derek Mason was, who was taken in a round after Joey Kent, Tennessee Vol legend, just to show you that sometimes you can find great gems late in the draft. But Derek Mason was a guy who was a repeated 1,000-yard receiver. Drew Bennett was a guy who was an undrafted free agent that they lucked into. But that was when they finally took the guidelines off of Steve McNair and just let him start throwing away. And they still had Eddie George on the roster, but that's when they transitioned. And it feels like we're at that point where we're going to see them let Will Levis grow, hopefully, into that role. But it's going to depend on whether or not he has they're going to have to get the pieces for him to throw to, because they're not on this roster. They've got a few pieces. DeAndre Hopkins, if he's here this next year, I feel confident in him because we actually saw him be the most recent 1,000-yard receiver for this offense, with an offensive line and an offense that was not just anemic, but one of the worst in the NFL.
2003 is the year that you're referencing with Bennett and Mason, yeah?
Yeah, I believe so, yes. I looked it up. It's been a couple weeks and I've slept since then. So,
well, that's McNair's co-MVP year.
Should have been MVP in 2002 when he did not practice for 5 straight weeks and started 5 straight games, 5 straight wins, helped lead them to an AFC Championship game. That they lost in Oakland to a team coached by the new Titans coach, his dad, Bill Callahan.
I'm going to do that a ton, too. It's okay. Brian and Bill.
Well, Callie. Just forget the first name.
No, I refuse. I will not. But my point with this is, you said they let him loose, right? They let the receivers loose. They took the guidelines off McNair. Who did that? Because I think there's, when enough time has passed, and we're talking about a quarter of a century of Tennessee Titans, just Tennessee Titans football, there's so many different coordinators, so many different names, so many different position coaches come through this place or these organizations, that to go back and talk about Les Steckel and Heimerdinger, right? Like those two individuals and their level of impact, or the transition that impact had on the direction that this franchise went and took, with McNair as, at the time, the first African-American player to win the MVP award in the NFL. I think he's only one of 4 still that has won the MVP award. But when they made that change from Steckel to Heimerdinger, how big of a revelation was that for the franchise?
It was huge because, literally, it felt like they were coaching Steve at that time. And let's not forget, he finished 3rd in the Heisman voting coming out of Alcorn State. And, his nickname coming into the NFL was Steve Air McNair, and for his ability to throw it and run it. And, it felt like for the first few years that he was being coached not to make mistakes, not to throw interceptions, like the clamps were on him. And, he did some of his best damage sometimes running the ball. And unfortunately, he got hurt. But when Heimerdinger came in, that's when they started making the transition. He was the OC starting in 2000, but there was a little bit of a transition there because 2000, they had just been to the Super Bowl. Eddie was, playing well and still very, very effective and a huge part of the offense. But the transition started when Eddie had a toe issue, a tendon issue that he ended up having to have surgery on after the 01 season. And then it was 2002 that Steve really started to blossom and they let him go. And I think that also coincides with the arrival of Drew Bennett because think about this. Derek Mason was mostly used as a returner and a depth receiver, and then they finally started using him as a receiver, and that's when his career really took off.
I can't imagine how infuriating that must have been for the fan base.
Well, let's put it this way. Derek Mason was a go-to guy in locker rooms after games because he wasn't afraid to speak his mind back as a player, and it was fun to hear sometimes.
I do love D-Mace. Teresa Walker hanging out in studio with us. I know you're slammed. Do you have another segment? I promise it's a short one. Okay, we'll do that with Teresa Walker. I'd like to ask her about the legacy that Amy Adams Strunk is building here as the controlling owner of this franchise. Teresa's obviously sat down and spoken with Amy in one-on-one settings. She's covered this franchise for its entirety of its existence here in Tennessee, so we'll get that context from her coming up next.
Life is busy. We could all use some extra time in our day, which is exactly why Two Rivers Ford offers mobile service. We'll bring the service to your driveway at no additional charge. Oil changes, brakes, batteries, the certified technicians at Two Rivers will perform basic maintenance on your vehicle wherever you are, so you'll have more time for moments like this. Schedule your mobile service appointment by scanning the QR code or calling Two Rivers Ford today.
You know, there's a part of me that wants to make this joke with Teresa Walker in studio, but Teresa is still as good as she once was. Like, that's not even a joke that I can make in her direction. And also, she's dangerously close to a variety of different Farm Bureau health plans mugs that they sent us. Very kind of Randy Wilmore and the rest of his crew to do that. But yes, they are loose objects here that would not feel good should they make contact with my temple.
Well, and you have heard a few of my stories where I have, you know, in the past threatened some violence.
Committed acts of violence. You can't say those things into a microphone.
The
Teresa,
last person I
hit,
hit, I was in college.
Okay.
And he deserved to be punched.
I believe that. That's a story that we'll have to have in the offseason with Teresa Walker of the Associated Press, who's here on more journalistic duties. We do have a phone call on some McNair stories. We do have phone calls to get to before we ask Teresa about Amy Adams Strunk kind of being in legacy mode. So we'll go to Trey in Nashville first.
Hey, Bucky. How you doing?
Yo.
Hey, so on my senior trip, we took a trip to Alcorn to see Steve play. And Steve wasn't actually the best quarterback in Mississippi. It was Jerry Butler from Macomb High School, my high school. Well, Jerry wanted to come back to the neighborhood and do kid stuff. And that's when Steve got Jerry's job. And then next thing you know, you got Air McNair. And I just want to let y'all know that. Have a good day.
Thanks for the story. We appreciate that. What could have happened?
If not for this, that. I mean, that's the thing, you know, like Robert Frost, the road not taken or whatever. So, you know, that's the thing. Trust me, I have that thought about my own life many, many times, that decisions that you make and how they impact where you land.
Well, you've been doing all right since then, one would say. Amy Adams Strunk took control of this team, Teresa, in 2015. It's her father's franchise. She's getting a stadium built for it. The groundbreaking ceremony will be on the 29th. She's into her 60s, late 60s now, Amy Adams Strunk, not to age her, but you start to get to a point as an NFL owner, as a professional sports team owner, where you get into legacy mode. It feels like with the stadium plans now officially underway and the direction that she is trying to take this franchise in, where she's talking openly, as one does when they make a coaching change, about the desire to bring Lombardi trophies to the city that you're in. How do you view Amy Adams Strunk's legacy as the controlling owner of the Titans, kind of in the shadow of her father? Is she still in the shadow of her father?
I don't think so. I think she's got the same competitiveness and drive that Bud did, but she, unlike her dad, is willing and understands that you've got to spend to get. I mean, look at the practice facility. She nearly doubled the size of that. So when people complain about the public money going toward the stadium, well, her family is also putting money toward that stadium. They paid to expand the facility out of pocket, and she has hired and staffed the franchise ridiculously. And I mean, she pulled this franchise out of a nosedive. Okay, you know, she took over in late March 2015 with her brother-in-law Tommy Smith retiring and focusing on the rest of KSA Industries.
I'm so sorry I missed that Tommy Smith tenure.
Oh, you didn't miss anything, baby. And she sat and watched for a little bit, you know, get her feet under, and then her biggest move was the first big move was firing Ken Wisenhunt. I mean, it was just a miserable era. And, you know, she goes to Mike Mularkey, and she made it clear when she made him, and, you know, when they went through a little bit of an interview process and then made him the head coach after taking the interim off, she started talking about wanting to win then. And I'm going to point out that since 2016, after she finally started reasserting herself or asserting herself as the controlling owner, that they are 13th in the NFL since 2016 for a winning record. They are 72-59 in that span. And she's had two coaches take them to at least the divisional round. Mularkey fired after, you know, losing a divisional game in New England, firing Mike Vrabel after winning, two division titles, coming just shy of a third, playing. Think about this. He played for a playoff berth in the first 5 seasons.
Yeah.
And, you know, so she's made it very clear she wants more. and she has spent the money to give the support, staff. She's done everything possible. The stadium, they're going to be breaking ground February 29th for that. And, there's money going into it. So, and she, yes, when she introduced Brian Callahan as the new coach and, with the new offensive philosophy, he was the first guy they interviewed by Zoom. He was one of the first 3 that they interviewed to, when you could start doing in-person interviews with people after the divisional round. And she threw that line out. She wants Lombardi's. She wants the thing that her dad never could get. They've been to 1 Super Bowl in 60 plus years. So she's trying to, she is trying to put her stamp on it. Her stamp is all over this franchise right now. And she's trying to position it to move into the forward and be a part of the modern NFL. She made it clear, that this NFL's changed. It's not her father's NFL. And, Bert Nihill, I think, was with, the 3HL crew and said, this isn't maybe even the NFL when she came in as an owner. So I cannot wait to see where this coaching staff, as it's being put together, takes this team with the resources that they've got, because this is a moment. This is a pivotal moment. The higher the resources, the 7th pick overall, 2nd most cap space, and a stadium that's going to be built right next door where you're going to see it going up as they put this team together. And she's making it clear she wants championships. But I'll remind fans, they're just not that easy to get.
Do you think the rest of the league views this as a second-tier, second-rate franchise?
Yes. I mean, come on. How many times in the last couple of weeks or 10 days since they hired Brian Callahan do we see these charts of the youngest coaches hired or the youngest coaches in the NFL? And they keep forgetting to include the Titans' new coach. And then you have, so there's that little thing. This franchise is constantly ignored by national media, unless there's speculation about coaches being fired, hired, you name it. Then they dive in and do their quick 2 little second hit. But no, they mostly ignore this franchise. I've seen it repeatedly. The 5-year span that they were among the, they had one of the best records in the entire NFL. I think it was the 5th best record in that 5-year span, starting in 99 through 2003. They were never picked to win the division or a Super Bowl. And if there was somebody out there, if you find me that, I can guarantee you it was a standalone, somebody trying to go against the crowd, because nobody has ever paid much attention to this team nationally.
They're one of 12 teams to not win a Super Bowl in today's NFL. And, we're running out of time here, so there's only so many ways that we can go with this and what we have left with Teresa. But I guess I'm just curious to see how much of her actions are dictated by that part of it, that the Tennessee Titans are not really on the map. They've been here for 25 years, but not really on the map where the rest of the league is concerned. So how much of her actions are because of that fact, how cognizant she is of that, and how much of it drives her, I don't know the answer to those questions because she doesn't take questions. But I'm so fascinated by the part of her tenure that we're in, because I really do think that it's a bit of legacy-defining time for Amy Adams Strunk, and I think she's taking full advantage of it, as is her right, as she should.
Well, and here's the thing. Look at what she's meant to Nashville. Her support and push with the Titans. That's why the NFL draft was here in 2019 and set a level that the NFL, I don't think they dared dream for the turnout, the visuals that they got. And they've been trying to mimic that every time they take the draft now to new cities. They set a big standard.
NFL, you can't do it.
You can't, no.
Bring it back.
Shut up. You're just trying to make me work harder. Stop that. But, it probably will be back here sooner than later, because Nashville showed what Nashville can do. And I think that is a big part of her legacy. But I don't think it's so much that she's being driven by legacy as she wants to win. And I do think that that's the part of, that she gets from her late father, that, she wants to win. She's putting the resources as much as possible to put this franchise on the map. And the way you do that is by winning. And I think she feels that as much as any player that's ever come through that locker room.
Teresa Walker. She's the best. AP is where you can read all of her great work. She's covering everything from Tennessee lawsuits to Tennessee Titans. She's got you covered in the state of Tennessee. Thank you for doing it, too.
My pleasure, Buck.
When we come back, we will talk about Super Bowl windows. It is, in fact, Super Bowl week. We'll talk about teams that have a Super Bowl window to take advantage of and whose might be closed next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. As Brian Callahan continues to put together his Titans coaching staff, the team made official the hiring of offensive coordinator Nick Holtz and defensive coordinator Denard Wilson on Monday. Titans are also reportedly interviewing former Giants special teams coordinator Thomas McGahee for the special teams job here in Tennessee. Former Titans staffers are finding new landing spots around the league. The New York Giants have hired former Titans defensive coordinator Shane Bowen to call the defensive plays for Brian Daboll. Former Titans OC Tim Kelly has been hired as the Giants' next tight ends coach. Roger Goodell had a press conference on Monday in Vegas, his annual State of the League address, confirming that the NFL will play in São Paulo, Brazil to kick off the 2024 season with the Eagles as the host team. Their opponent is unknown. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
All right, final hour's already here. Moving quickly. Thanks for hanging out here with us. Lucas Panzica, myself, Teresa Walker, the Queen, gracing us with her presence. If you missed any of that, you can check out the podcast after the fact. So, Super Bowl week. It is upon us. It's always a weird thing to kind of figure out how to do the show during Super Bowl week. Because on the one hand, I feel like I want to talk about the game all week long. And there will, of course, be time to talk about the game. We didn't really do much of it last week. We had a bunch of different things going on. Chiefs-Niners, the level of interest that it has here in Nashville, Tennessee, I'm not really sure. You know, we're going to carry the game. I'm sure it's going to rate well on local radio, having the game on our airwaves, but I don't know how invested our audience is in seeing Patrick Mahomes succeed, Kyle Shanahan fail, Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift going to Disney World. I don't know how much of this you guys are dialed in on, but it is a fascinating game for a variety of different reasons. And it brings up the conversation of Super Bowl windows, right? Lucas and I kind of got into it a little bit at the end of a show last week. I think it was Thursday or Friday. It just ended up being you and me yelling back and forth at each other. If you make the playoffs, you're a Super Bowl contender. Lucas spitting back at me with rage. No, you're not. So we figured we'd embrace debate in the noon hour today.
Yeah, I'd like to have this discussion again without you telling our audience that the Pittsburgh Steelers were Super Bowl contenders last year.
They were in the postseason.
Let's get around the technicality of, because you are in the Super Bowl, then you are in the playoffs, you are a Super Bowl contender. Like, that's like saying, because you are in the AFC West, you are an AFC West contender, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are the hapless Chargers with Justin Herbert injured and you're 6 games back of the Chiefs midway through the season, you're still a contender, right? You're in it mathematically, but no, you're not.
So let me do it with you this way, okay? Because you're so let's just reframe the discussion, because we're not giving people a lot of context to how it is that we landed, talking about this right before the polls and ran out of time before we could actually flesh the discussion out. You wanted to have a discussion about teams whose Super Bowl windows were basically to run through the list and say, all right, team is in their Super Bowl window, team Super Bowl window has closed, or otherwise.
Are they currently in a Super Bowl window?
Are they currently in a Super Bowl window?
We're all in agreement that the goal for Brian Callahan, if we're going to listen to Amy Adams Strunk talk about championships and meeting the moment and not being satisfied with just more wins than losses, then you're talking about getting this franchise into a place where we can look at each other and say, this team is in a window where they could feasibly win a Super Bowl right now.
Agreed.
The roster, the quarterback, the coaching staff. It is within striking distance, right?
Despite them being 4th of 4 in their division right now, the window theoretically is open for them to compete for a championship. Now, before we continue with this, because you've cast my my qualification aside as a technicality.
Because it is.
Using the Pittsburgh Steelers, a 10-7 team in a division where every team had a winning record.
With Mason Rudolph playing quarterback.
You cast it aside as a technicality. Lucas, are the 2019 Tennessee Titans a technicality? Because that team was not a Super Bowl contender by anybody that you would ask other than the people who watch them play on a daily basis. And even at 2-4, when they looked lifeless, dead in the water in Denver, one of the, if not the, worst football games still that I've ever seen played, a 16-0 loss. It will be forever burned in my brain against Joe Flacco's Denver Broncos. This was like 3 teams ago for Flacco.
It was a great run, 2019, an historic run, quite literally, from Derrick Henry.
They are disqualified under your premise of technicality.
Did we at any point consider the Titans to be in a Super Bowl window in 2019? At any point?
Yes.
Did we? 2-4. We're talking Super Bowl, huh?
At any point in 2019?
Ryan Tannehill comes in and starts winning games, and we jumped to this team can win a Super Bowl?
Not immediately, not after Denver, but throughout the course of that season, you started to realize, okay, they got real teeth. They've beaten the Chiefs.
Sure.
Now, it came down to the wire against the Chiefs, and the division was not like a walkthrough the way that it was for the next 2 seasons for them, where it was their division to lose, basically, in the AFC South. But yes, as you started to see that thing come together, the thing that would have closed their Super Bowl window is if they had to reset on the quarterback. They didn't. The whole premise of the 2019 Titans was this is a team that's built to win. This is a coach that's coming in to maximize it. The ownership and the general manager believe that it's not being maximized under the current construct. All right, Vrabel. We'll hedge our bets with Tannehill. Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, Humphreys, Saffold, Lawan. Jeff was on that team. That's his rookie season, right? That rookie class helped propel them to the AFC Championship game in the ways that the Houston Texans went from worst to first in the league. The reason that worst to first exists as often as it does in the NFL is because you nail a draft class, you can get there. So, yeah, as that season went along, and having covered that Denver game and thinking that they were ghastly, they were the worst team in football that week by a mile. As it started to play itself out, even though I thought they would go to New England and lose before we went to New England and saw how that game played out, and even as I thought they would lose to Baltimore, and even as I went to Kansas City thinking that they were going to lose, that team, as that season played out down the stretch, showed itself to be more than its start.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not denying that. And then going into 2020 with that established core and realizing that you have something special here in Derrick Henry, and the rare instance where you can get into a Super Bowl window where the offense is centered around the running back. Doesn't happen, right? Very rare instance, but that was the case here. And we were sitting here in 2020 and 2021 where they were indisputably in a Super Bowl window as the 1 seed in 2021, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But at no point going into the 2019 season were we talking about this team in that way. And at no point until really they beat the Ravens were we talking about this team in that way until they got 1 game away from winning the Super Bowl. And then what happened? They ran into Pat Mahomes, and you say it went down to the wire. It's arguable, right? I think that back-breaking run at the end of the second quarter, and then the Chiefs kind of controlled the second half.
They pulled away.
Yeah. So ultimately, the Titans, yes, made a great run in the 2019 postseason, and yes, we're a game away from the Super Bowl, but did anybody consider them serious Super Bowl contenders during that run?
No, God, no. No. I mean, every week they were the sacrificial lamb, right? When they got to the Final Four in the AFC, it was that again, I'm going to try to do meme radio, which is a disaster every time. But the 4-headed dragon meme, you know what I'm talking about, where 3 of them look absolutely vicious and the 4th one's a dope?
Yeah.
The 4th one's a dope? That's the Titans.
Yeah.
Dopey is the Titans.
It was, well, who played the Niners? Did they beat the Packers in the NFC Championship that year?
That sounds right. I have to go back and look it up.
It's probably another Rodgers loss in the NFC Championship.
Is Rodgers your new Staley?
But I think the point of this exercise, which we could do coming up next, is going through and looking at every team in the NFL and how many can you make a serious argument for saying in the offseason, in the lead up to 2024, that they feel they are in a Super Bowl window and that this offseason is about maximizing that potential in 2024?
I just think it's an interesting discussion based on the way that you've outlined it, because you're saying that this year's Titans team heading into 2024 is technically at the start of what should be a Super Bowl window, right?
No, I do not consider the Titans to be in a Super Bowl window at this moment.
Oh, see, that's
Do
interesting.
you?
I
Will
think
Levis
it is.
has shown you enough to say that?
No, Lucas, that's not. I think we're having two different discussions, but trying to get to the same place. Because my contention is your clock for Super Bowl window, not Super Bowl contention, but Super Bowl window, starts the minute you have a rookie quarterback's contract on your books. Now, everything else that you do around that dictates your peak window to get to the Super Bowl. Because how much harder do things become when you pay Burrow $52 million a year and you're taking from other pieces and parts? When you pay Allen, right? The end of that rookie quarterback contract does not outright close the window, but it heightens the degree of difficulty in ways that very few people have been able to overcome.
It is the job of Brian Callahan to open that window, right? That is his job now as the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, to put this team into that conversation of which we have no basis to say they are yet. That doesn't mean things can't change.
Sure.
I'm talking about right now on February 6th, 2024, who can we realistically look at with the core of their team, what we know they have at quarterback, head coach, play caller, etc., and say they are primed with a good offseason to head into the 2024 season firmly in a Super Bowl window.
See, I think, and it's in the details. You and I are talking about you are defining Super Bowl contention as a Super Bowl window. I'm saying that a Super Bowl window spans multiple seasons, kind of like the slow build we talked about yesterday.
It absolutely does.
With
yes.
the Bengals and the Lions and now the Titans. So to your point, is Brian Callahan the thing that opens the Super Bowl window? I understand that position. My contention is the minute that you draft Will Levis, your Super Bowl window resets with that rookie quarterback contract. And everything that you do in that window determines whether or not you capitalize on said Super Bowl window or not. Am I being too nitpicky here? Because that's how I think about this stuff.
You're right in that is the goal, that is the aspiration.
Sure. Who's actually accomplished the things to put themselves in a position?
We have nothing to say that that's the case.
So these are just two different discussions that we're having. We just need to pick which discussion that we want to have coming up next.
We can do that.
Okay. Oh, it is the most self-involved part of me that loves this song. This is my favorite Toby Keith. Bleep you, Toby Keith. The lyrics on this are they're immaculate. Do you ever, like, read into, you're a music person, do you ever read too deep into lyrics? Like, do you start to identify with some of the lyrics from some of these songs? Like I'm definitely a shower singer, and I was belting some Bob Dylan, It Ain't Me, Babe, the other day. I just at the top of my lungs. So embarrassing if anybody ever heard me.
That song strikes you, huh?
Oh, yeah.
You moved away to the big city from Indiana, and just all your doubters, you're living in their radio.
Oh, this song?
Right.
Oh, hell yeah. Are you kidding me?
Except you're not, because nobody in Indiana listens to this show. But I do get the concept.
That's not true. I get texts from my family all the time.
Oh, your family, yeah.
Text from, that and my high school buddies that crank call me on my birthday when we do the show on my birthday. That's always been an unfortunate feature of this radio show. But yeah, I mean, listen, everybody has a song that, like, you get up for, right? That you feel like is identifying with a certain time in your life, and that just whether you're driving in the car or you're singing in the shower or wherever it is that you feel comfortable enough belting a song out loud. You're damn right the day I signed the deal that we got this radio show, I was screaming that song in my car. How do you bleeping like me now? Absolutely. That's my favorite Toby Keith song. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. It's kind of like My Way by Frank Sinatra, right? Again, there's a theme. Tough scene. It's not what we're here to talk about, although we could do a little My Way with Amy Adams Strunk stuff. We'll do that here in a second. So, for the audience that's trying to soldier through this convoluted Super Bowl windows discussion with us, Lucas, what is the conversation that you would like to have with me right now?
Basically, trying to figure out what percentage of teams can you make a good argument that, if not in a Super Bowl window, will be Super Bowl contenders in 2024.
Okay.
What percentage of the NFL is Brian Callahan trying to get the Titans to?
So I would say teams that you could make a legitimate case to compete for a Super Bowl out of 32. I would argue that you could make a case. Some would vary in strength. You could make a case for 12.
Okay, so that's like, if you just are pulling a number out, you're going 12 before we really go through the teams.
Yes.
How much of that is you weighing the rookie quarterback window?
A good percentage.
Because we were having this conversation during the break, too. We put a lot of emphasis on that you got to make something happen in that window, which is absolutely fair and true. But then we started looking at recent Super Bowl winners. And just in the last decade, the Super Bowl champs with a starting quarterback still in his rookie contract are very far and few between.
Okay.
Now, you've had Joe Burrow got there in his rookie deal, right? I mean, Pat Mahomes got there very early on. But Pat Mahomes last year, was he on his rookie deal when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl?
No.
2 years ago, Matt Stafford on his rookie deal when the Rams won?
No.
3 years ago, Tom Brady at age 45?
No.
Before that, Kansas City winning.
Yes.
Mahomes was still in his rookie deal, that 2019 season, yes. Mm-hmm. So there's the first one. New England beating the Rams in 2019. Brady, no.
Brady different, though. Like, I almost feel like we have to move. The Brady discussion is so difficult because of the way that his contracts were structured.
Well, now he makes up a pretty fair amount of these. So. a lot of these Super Bowl winners are
I
Tom
understand, but like my point with the value of the rookie quarterback contract is it gives you the best chance, right? The best possible chance. How can you maximize your roster to as much? How can you Russell Wilson this thing? Where the quarterback doesn't have to be outright the driving force, but he's good enough, right? He's good enough. Russell Wilson was a passenger on those Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl contending teams, one that won and one that lost.
His first one was 2-3 years into his NFL career.
It was Marshawn Lynch's offense, right? It's what it would have been. It's what the discussion would have been if the Titans had made it to the Super Bowl in 2019 instead of the Chiefs.
But I feel like we label it as this baseline that it's a requirement. If you want to go and win a Super Bowl, your best chance to do it is with your quarterback still on his rookie deal. And it makes sense. It's very logical. Like, I completely agree. The Bengals got there with Joe Burrow. But when you look at the actual results of these Super Bowl matchups, a lot of them are two starting Jimmy G versus Pat Mahomes. Jimmy G was not in his rookie deal. It's rare that you get 2 teams in the Super Bowl with quarterbacks still in their rookie deal. And I can look through it maybe at some other point when we can revisit this, but I would be fascinated to know the last time that happened in a Super Bowl matchup where both quarterbacks are in their rookie deal and both teams are maximizing that around them. It would just be an interesting discussion to have. Anyway.
Okay.
You tell me, Buck, starting in the AFC East, are the Buffalo Bills considered Super Bowl contenders in 2024?
Yeah.
The Miami Dolphins.
They should be. I don't think they are.
We're saying no?
Optically, yes.
It's a very debatable one.
Optically, yes, but for me personally, I have a hard time with the Dolphins because the minute that you take them out of South Florida in January, you put them in a situation that they can't possibly be prepared for, right? Like the weather does not impact as many teams or impact teams as much as it does impact the Miami Dolphins. And I know nobody is well equipped to play in negative 30 degrees with wind chill, but I struggle with Miami. Optically, yes. Me personally, no.
Okay, well, we'll just go with you personally.
Okay.
If your number is 12, let's track down now going through the teams how many you end up saying yes to. So
okay, I'll keep count of my teams.
Jets.
No.
They probably believe they are.
Sure.
But,
again, we're doing my list, right?
Sure. Yep.
No. Aaron Rodgers coming off an Achilles, no matter how much Dolphin sexies listen to recover as a part of his holistic healing practices and things like that as he makes fun of Mr. Pfizer. I think that the Jets, with that offensive line and a 40-year-old quarterback, no thank you.
Because the last time we did this, we were doing it based on what do those teams think, right? And they're disillusioned, whatever.
This is a different game.
So we've got one. Patriots are a no.
No.
Chiefs.
Yes.
Okay, that's 2. Raiders.
No.
Broncos.
No.
Again, another that probably thinks, Sean Payton probably thinks that he's in that mix. Chargers.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I agree. That's 3. Ravens.
Yes.
Browns.
No.
Steelers.
No.
Bengals.
Yes.
Texans.
Yes.
Jags.
No.
Colts.
No.
Titans.
No.
So we're on 6.
We are in 6.
And we're done with the AFC.
Halfway there.
So we're on pace to hit your 12 number.
I told you this is a very exact science that I've been performing back here. There's all kinds of mathematical equations that you can't see on your side of the glass that I've been conducting.
Yeah, you're like Zach Galifianakis in The Hangover at the blackjack table.
No, that's Robert.
Cowboys.
Yes.
Eagles.
Yes.
Giants.
No.
Commanders.
No.
Niners.
Yes.
Rams.
Yes.
Seahawks.
Yes.
Man, you love Geno Smith.
I do.
Cardinals.
No.
Lions.
Yes.
Packers.
No.
Vikings.
No.
Bears.
No.
Bucks.
No.
Saints.
No.
Falcons. Panthers.
No.
So what is that, 11?
That's 12.
Oh, did we hit 12?
We hit 12. I told you. Very exact science.
I think you manipulated
You
it.
asked me. There was no way that I was going to cape up for Geno as hard as I have in the last couple of weeks and say no to the Seahawks. So the Seahawks are my 12th. Now they'd be 12 at 12, but
with the Seahawks, it's just the way that your argument is back-to-back 9 and 8 seasons with Geno, and I struggle with that.
No, my argument is Geno. My argument is Geno has figured out how to play high-level NFL quarterback, and that gives you an opportunity. The biggest issue with the Seahawks is not Geno. The biggest issue is they can't stop the teams that they play twice a year. They get gashed by Seattle or by San Francisco and Los Angeles. They were going to hire a defensive guy. It sounds like. Listen to Mina talk about it. They're going to hire a defensive guy no matter what because they think they've got the offense to compete. It's the fact that the defense they've got some players defensively, but Pete Carroll's been running the exact same single high safety defense his entire career.
Yeah, and they got the best defensive candidate.
They got the best one. So, again, my argument is fortified by Geno. It's not predicated off Geno. My argument is predicated off the idea that the biggest issue that they had this offseason, they fixed.
I would replace Seahawks with Packers in this and probably still land at 12. Just
okay.
What I think of Jordan Love's ceiling and how much closer the Packers have been in the last couple of years than the Seahawks this year. I mean, Green Bay probably should have won that game in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they would have won in Detroit.
God, that interception by Love is so bad.
So you're talking about it really was.
It's so bad.
You would have been talking about having to win in Dallas, in San Francisco, and in Detroit to get to the Super Bowl, which just doesn't happen very often. So, but as far as Super Bowl contender 2024, I would favor the Packers over the Seahawks. Either way, we both arrive right about 12. That is 38% of the NFL. So,
who do you disagree with on my list of the 12?
Seahawks.
So again, the most.
Oh yeah, easily.
Beyond
yes.
Okay, beyond Seattle. So again, I'll read them for the audience. Bills, Ravens, Bengals, Texans, Chiefs, Chargers, Eagles, Cowboys, Lions, Rams, Niners, Seahawks. Is there any one beyond Seattle that you disagree with?
No, I think any one of those markets, if the discussion in those markets all offseason is about gunning for a Super Bowl in 2024 and having the pieces to do it, and that's what this offseason is about, to set up for that type of run, then I think that would be totally fair in each and every one of those markets except Seattle. First-time head coach, I get he's a great defensive mind, but I would replace the Seahawks with the Packers.
You wrote him off once. He didn't write back. He'll do it again. Don't you tempt this man. I've never in my life caped up harder for an NFL player than I have Geno Smith the last 2 weeks. I don't know what's going on.
So 38% of the NFL is where we are saying Brian Callahan needs to get the Titans to within the next 2-3 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, my position is 2. You have 2 seasons. From my personal level of expectation. I'm not going to speak for Titans fans because you can have whatever level of expectation you want to. I'm saying as a person who is covering this team, who is reading the messages that the ownership structure is delivering about the state of this team and the moves that they have made, combined with the variable of the quarterback's rookie contract and that you've already burned 1 year of the 4, you have to have a decision on Will Levis as the future or not the future by the end of 2025. Yes? 2 seasons is what Brian Callahan gets from me, personally, to get this team to the top 38% of the league. And I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation based on the way that your ownership is approaching this. I think that if you asked her in an honest moment, in a transparent moment, she would probably agree with the shorter timeline as opposed to, what did Zach Taylor get in? Zach Taylor and Dan Campbell both got 3 years, right? We've used those examples a lot around here. 3 years feels fair, but Burrow they had on a first-round contract. Will Levis is on a second-round contract. You do not have a fifth-year option to maintain that level of flexibility. It's better for Will because he gets paid sooner. And it may ultimately end up being better for you because you can get ahead of the curve of some guys who might cost more. So there are some pros and cons to all of this stuff. But for me, we've talked about this. Brian Callahan has 2 years of runway to get the Tennessee Titans to the top 38% to where we think they're capable of competing that season for a Super Bowl.
And you're not going to have an opportunity for an offseason with as many resources around that rookie QB deal as much as you are here.
Correct.
With the top 10 pick and all the money.
Correct.
So you could argue this is the most important offseason of the Brian Callahan era, even though it's his first one.
Yes, because in theory, you're not going to pick 7 for a while. The last time that they picked that high was Conklin, and that was 8. So that was what, 2016? That was Henry's rookie year? 2016, the year after Marcus.
That sounds right. Conklin's all-pro year, 2016.
Yeah, the rookie year, yeah. They picked, so Marcus 2, Conklin 8. Titans have been picking in the teens to 20s since then. You really don't have this many shots at that. That's why it makes the Ben Johnson thing all the more confusing to me. Because they have more cap space. They have the most cap space. They have the best possible draft pick that team.
You're talking about Washington.
Didn't I say that?
You said that's what makes the Ben Johnson thing.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
But yeah, that Ben Johnson did not take the Washington job.
Yes, sorry, I thought I said the Washington thing. That's what makes the Washington Ben Johnson situation so confusing. They have the second overall pick. They have the most cap space in football. They have a new ownership and new leadership structure that every every commies fan in America would have told you that they would have killed for under the Dan Snyder regime. So that Ben Johnson passed this up, in theory, right? All the messaging around it is that Ben Johnson withdrew himself from consideration, not that Ben Johnson didn't get the job. And Washington's actions would indicate that he withdrew himself too. So it's weird.
The F&M Bank chat is correcting us that 2017 was the last time the Titans had a top 10 pick. Not
Corey
60.
Davis was 5. Thank you. Thank you for the correction. I forgot that was they had two. I forgot that they had 2 first-round picks and that Adoree was in the teens and Corey Davis was 5. That's right. Okay. We've got a little bit of time here. Do we want to save this Amy Adams Strunk legacy discussion?
Well, I think we've kind of had it to an extent with Teresa, too.
A little bit. I just want to play this call that you guys got on my sick day that you're alleging was a fake sick day. I did, in fact, have food poisoning, despite what Lucas will tell you. You guys got a call from a listener talking about Amy Adams Strunk. This is Willie in New Mexico, correct?
Hey, so yeah, called yesterday about the pointing stuff back really more to the ownership of the Titans. Now, I did the math a little bit more overnight, and just kind of to really rub in salt in the wound. The Titans have been around since 1960, which is 63 years now of play, and we've only been to 1 Super Bowl, right? I don't care how many defensive head coach hires you've had. I don't care how many offensive head coach hires we've had. Only 1 Super Bowl appearance indicates to me that it's probably something a little bit deeper, right? How do you have these teams that are consistent and reappearing in Super Bowls, and yet the Titans can't? So my big question to you is, at what point should the Adams family look at this and say, clearly, we are not the ones to own this franchise. Clearly, we cannot make it happen. Because they could have all the best players in there playing essentially Madden Mobile with the team, stack the roster, and yet I still don't think they could get it done. At what point do they call it off and just cut ties? Thanks. Appreciate it.
My answer was immediately, at no point. At no point.
I wish I would have been here for only that call.
Now, this is prior to the hiring of Brian Callahan, so I don't know if Titan Willie in New Mexico's stance would have changed, or based on how much he liked the Callahan hire.
What do you think goes through a person's head like that? Would you, Willie in New Mexico, have the self-awareness to look around and say, as an NFL owner, if you were in this hypothetical situation, yeah, I'm the problem. I'll get rid of it. It doesn't mean anything, does it? There's no long-lasting implications of being an NFL owner, one of 32 members of as exclusive a club as any, so much so that the former president of the United States wrecked the whole USFL trying to get into the NFL and was declined or denied membership to be an NFL owner. There's a very, very incredibly telling documentary about Donald Trump and the USFL and how all of that came from a slight.
You know what? Maybe it's me. Yeah, it'd be like Dak Prescott walking into Mike McCarthy's office or Jerry Jones' office after that disaster against the Packers in the playoffs. You know what? I don't think I should be the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys anymore. Clearly, I'm not the best person for this job.
You can keep your $40 million.
Yeah,
you can keep your 40. I don't need it, Jerry. I don't think I'm the right person for the job. Irreconcilable differences.
I just want what's best for the team.
Man, well, I love it because it speaks to a level of naivete that I just don't think. I mean, it may be more common than we're giving it credit for, Lucas. I don't know.
Sam on the F&M Bank chat says that guy will never be an NFL owner.
Yeah, one would think.
My favorite part was I did the math overnight. And since 1960, the Titans have only been to 1 Super Bowl. He really crunched the numbers.
Just a picture, some person, again, since I've watched Breaking Bad recently and New Mexico is on my mind, just in a very, very sad, windswept kind of desert shack, crunching numbers overnight. You know, maybe a meth lab down the street and something like that. I don't know. I assume just that now that there's meth labs all over New Mexico that people haven't found yet, and laundry cleaners and other things. But I just imagine somebody with glasses down the end of his nose and not even a calculator, like an abacus. You know what an abacus is? One of those things that you slide the stones from side to side as a means of counting. Somebody is crunching the numbers diligently overnight to determine that the Titans have only appeared in 2 Super Bowls since 1960.
Well, 1.
1. Damn it.
Oh, I guess. Hey,
Damn it.
that's why he crunched the numbers.
Damn it.
That's why he crunched the numbers.
I was so good until we had to do math.
1 and not 2.
Why are we so consistently bad at that? Last call for phone calls. Now, the only way it gets better than a Toby Keith drinking song is a Toby Keith drinking song with Willie Nelson. It sucks. 62 years old, stomach cancer, gone too soon, country music legend. I don't know that I've ever, seen or heard Toby Keith quoted. I don't know that I've heard him talk too much beyond just enjoying his music and listening to his music and things like that. I wonder what he would think of just the general state of country music as we know it. I'm always fascinated by that. And even something like Broadway, right? How do you like me now is my favorite Toby Keith song, but he's talking about moving down to Tennessee, people laughing at him about it, ends up on the radio with his ex-girlfriend's in an unhappy marriage. Her husband doesn't come home. Her kids are keeping her up late. Who does she hear when when her alarm clock goes off in the morning on her radio? It's Toby Keith, the ex, right? Country musicians coming to Tennessee seeking a career in country music. What must that experience be like in the modern age? Does stuff like that even still happen with TikTok? Because that's how music gets distributed now. Music gets discovered and distributed on TikTok. I don't want to say primarily, but in a huge portion of it. Does stuff like that still exist? I don't know. Something to think about. Michael in Nashville is up next. Hey, Michael.
Hey, I'm here. I'm
Okay.
sorry. No, the first championship was actually in 1960-61, and Houston Oilers won that. It was the AFC championship. The Super Bowls didn't start till 1967 with Green Bay and I believe Kansas City or Oakland. I get them mixed up, but he didn't do his research good enough. So if you win the very first one, I guess that gave him motivation to keep going.
Michael in Nashville says, eat it.
Eat it, Titan Willie.
Yes, it is an important discussion, important context to know. And frankly, I didn't until the commercial break that the Super Bowl didn't start until 1967 because the AFL and the NFL, the Foolish Club, right? I've watched that documentary that NFL Films has done on the merger, basically, the NFL-AFL merger and how that came to be and how big a part of that Bud Adams was on the AFL side of things. So important context there from Michael. Do we have anything else before polls?
High school basketball tonight. 7:15 air.
Just you.
Ravenwood against Independence. Just me. Ron Slay will be in the air with the rest of the 3HL crew headed to Vegas. I will be on the air doing our final high school hoops broadcast of 2024.
That sounds like it'd be a pretty lonely proposition doing a game by yourself. Do you have anybody there with you? Is anybody physically sitting with you?
Moses, Jawan, and our awesome promotions team are out there. They're super helpful. They do a great job. And basketball, if there's any sport that is easy, at least for me, to call solo, it's easily basketball.
Oh, it's moving so fast.
Especially at the high school level.
On radio, you have to talk the entire time.
Yeah. So it'll be fun. Always enjoy some good Williamson County high school ball.
All right, polls, please.
Zoinks, like, hey, Scoop, stop the count, Yeah. The polls have closed. The votes are in. It's time for a poll update, Scoop. A poll update? Yeah. Zoinks, Scoop. Here's Buck Rising Show daily correspondent Lucas Panzica. Yeah.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the most trusted Ford dealership in the South. What in sports made you say, oh no, this weekend? Andrew said, seeing the Chiefs are an underdog in the Super Bowl. I was hoping the 49ers would win, but now we have to see yet another Chiefs Super Bowl victory.
Mine was the reporter. Well, I should have changed it to the reporter asking Patrick Mahomes at Super Bowl Media Night to do a Kermit the Frog impression. And then he spoke, and that was the Kermit the Frog impression.
Goody says that Giant fans were celebrating the Shane Bowen hire as their next defensive coordinator. He said, I told them to get ready for 15-yard off-ball coverage on 3rd and 6.
You're making that a Shane Bowen problem, but I don't know how much of that is a Shane Bowen problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're gonna have that energy about the Titans organization under Mike Vrabel, then should it not be applicable to Shane Bowen? Does he not get a fresh start?
How would you define Amy Adams Strunk's legacy so far as Titans owner? Brian says driven. wants to make the Titans as successful as possible. Kenneth says, high expectations, middle of the road results so far.
That's fair.
Jibby says, bold. And Eric says she puts her money where her mouth is, has high standards, and is invested in seeing the Titans win and not just make a profit.
Well, yeah, that's definitely true. She clearly wants to put this franchise on the map in a way that it's not, right? And that accounts for something. Their success has not been there. It's been fleeting, we'll call it. But she's trying to make this a more consistently successful product.
She's not satisfied with anything less, right?
Which I like.
That's not something that can be debated, being okay with living in mediocrity. I don't know how many NFL franchises, their fan bases are saying that about them right now.
They're not even, they haven't necessarily, but they had 2 seasons of mediocrity to below average. For the most part, they were living pretty good. So I think that speaks even higher of her, either way, whatever the proper grammatical context is, that she had a good situation and that she demands better than good.
Which era of Titans football was the biggest philosophical shift? 75%, the vast majority say it is this one, Vrabel to Callahan. 13% say it was Ken Wisenhunt to Mike Mularkey. 7% say it was Steckel to Heimerdinger, the offensive coordinator change under Jeff Fisher. 5% say it was Munchak to Wisenhunt.
Wonder how much of that is generational, you know?
Yeah, probably people on Twitter. The majority of people on Twitter answering that because that's the one that they're living through right now.
We had a guy named Heimerdinger?
But that's a massive philosophical change, though.
Sure.
The Heimerdinger to Steckel, the offenses were vastly different. Still the same head coach, still a lot of the same personnel. This is as night and day as it gets to me, Mike Vrabel to Brian Callahan.
I don't know. To hear Teresa talk about it, it sounds like it was pretty night and day from Steckel to Heimerdinger just because of the way that they kind of took the chains off, took the leashes off a little bit.
How many NFL teams are currently in a Super Bowl window? Kenneth says AFC, the team with Pat Mahomes, NFC, all of them not named the Cowboys. Swaggerval on Twitter says about 5 or 6.
Oh, so much more selective.
Those are the polls.
All right, very good. That's the show. We're run out of time. Blaine and Mickey have you coming up next, 3HL after that. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I'll talk to you on Primetime.